Okay, let's unpack this. We're diving deep today into, well, a world that's both horrifying and kind of strangely beautiful.
Uh-huh. That Little Nightmares world. Tiny characters, huge, scary places.
Exactly. We're talking about the next game, the one everyone's waiting for, Little Nightmares 3.
That's right. And we've gathered quite a bit for this deep dive. You know, community chats from Reddit, detailed game articles, official developer stuff.
Producer interviews too, right? And even some spec data.
Yep, all of that. It's quite the stack.
So our mission today is basically to pull out the most important bits from all that for you. We want to give you the essentials on LN3.
What it is, why it feels like a big step for the series, especially with some of the changes stirring up the community.
Yeah, think of this as your shortcut.
Yeah.
Get you totally up to speed on what's out there so far.
Because there is definitely a lot of buzz, you know, excitement, but also questions, especially since Tarsier, the original folks, aren't making this one.
Right, that's a big point we'll get into. Okay, so fundamentals first. Looking at the sources, what kind of game are we actually talking about here, genre-wise?
It definitely stays true to its roots. The sources all peg it as puzzle platform, survival horror, adventure, that mix.
So expect the usual. Tricky jumps, clever puzzles, hiding from terrifying things.
Pretty much, yeah. That core loop seems intact.
Okay. And you mentioned the developer change. That's a key piece of info from the sources. Who's taking the reins?
That would be super massive games. And, you know, the sources make a point of their horror background.
Like Until Dawn, The Quarry, stuff like that.
Exactly. They've got the horror chops, and they actually handled the enhanced versions of Little Nightmares 2, so they're not completely new to it.
Ah, okay. So they have some familiarity. Tarsier confirmed they were moving on, right?
Yeah, after LN2. But Bandai Namco owns the IP, and, well, clearly they want more Nightmares.
Makes sense. Okay, different studio, but horror experts. The big question then, when can you actually play it?
The sources all say 2025. Exactly when in 2025. So that's fuzzy.
A lot of guesswork in the community, I bet.
Oh, yeah. Big topic. But platform-wise, it's hitting pretty much everything. PC, PS4, PS5, Xbox One, Series XS, and Switch.
Wow, okay. Covering all the bases there. Any early hints in the sources about PC requirements for listeners on PC?
Just the minimums popped up in the data we saw. Looks like an Intel Core 2 Duo E8400 for the CPU.
Okay.
And an NVIDIA GeForce 510 GPU with 4 gigs of RAM.
Sounds pretty accessible, actually, like they're aiming wide.
Seems that way, yeah. Good news for a lot of setups.
Definitely. The sources also stress it's a standalone sequel.
Yeah, that's a point they make. You don't need to have played the first two. Newcomers can jump right in.
For fans?
Oh, for fans, the devs mentioned there will be, like, threads or secrets connecting back, little nods, extra context.
Nice. Good balance. Okay, let's talk setting. Where's this nightmare taking place?
The big picture is still the Newware,
Right.
that shared awful dream world you get to by sleeping that connects everything.
Right, the usual nightmare dimension. But the main location for this game.
It's called the Spiral. Sources describe it as, like, a cluster of disjointed, really disturbing places.
It's a cluster, okay.
Yeah, and Lo and Alone, the protagonists, have to navigate through it. It's set after the events of the Maw and Pale City.
The Spiral.
Yeah.
Sounds suitably ominous. Do we know the first place you'll explore inside it?
We do. It's called the Necropolis. And the descriptions sound amazing visually.
Yeah. How so?
Like a city literally raised from desert sand, battered by wind, used to be inhabited by these dwellers, but now it's a ghost town.
Ruins, statues, windmills, that kind of vibe.
Exactly. And the sources mention finding frozen moments of life, little
Yeah.
snapshots of what happened there. Creepy stuff.
Ooh, yeah, frozen moments of life. That's chilling. And the lore, the world building,
Yeah.
it goes beyond just the game this time, right? Sources mentioned something else.
Yeah, this is pretty interesting. Bandai Namco's actively building out the world outside the game.
How?
Remember that audio fiction podcast series, The Sounds of Nightmares?
Vaguely, yeah.
Well, the sources confirm it's canon, like official story. And it explains more about the nowhere, where the kids come from.
Okay.
And critically, it features places that directly link to locations you'll actually visit in Little Nightmares 3.
Whoa, really? So the podcast isn't just extra flavor, it's like required reading or listening.
It seems pretty integral, yeah. Gives you canonical background that feeds right into the game's story. It's a new way they're handling that sparse environmental storytelling.
That adds a whole new layer. Okay, so new setting, new developer, expanding lore. Let's meet the new kids on the block. Who are we playing as?
We've got two new protagonists, Lo and Alone. The sources paint them as best friends. They're trapped in the spiral together.
And their goal is just get out.
Pretty much. Find a way out of the nowhere entirely. And the key thing is they have to rely on each other to survive.
Okay, tell me about Lo first. What do the sources say?
Lo's described as a boy, kind of scrawny, wears this raven-like mask. Apparently the eyes on the mask are different sizes, which is a neat detail. Got some distinct clothes, too, like a glove or sleeve on one hand, a beaded bracelet. His main item is a bow and arrow.
A bow. Interesting. What's his motivation?
Hope, basically. He's searching for some mythical gateway he believes can get him home.
Okay, driven by hope. And his friend, Alone.
Alone is a girl, described as an incurable tinkerer, always fiddling with things.
What's she look like?
She wears this yellow suit, kind of like a hazmat suit maybe, and workshop goggles. Her tool is a wrench.
A wrench, okay.
And interestingly, the sources point out she's the first main character who seems to use her item, the wrench, for actual defense against smaller enemies, not just puzzles.
Oh, really? That's a shift. What's her driving force?
Curiosity. She wants to figure out how the spiral works, trace it back to its source, understand the machinery of the nightmare, sort of.
So different tools, different motivations. Bow and arrow, wrench, hope, and curiosity. And the sources hinted at lore connections, right? This is where fans probably started buzzing.
Oh, absolutely. The community forums lit up. People immediately noticed Alone's hairstyle.
Yeah. Why?
It looks really similar to the girl with braids, a character from LN2's expanded lore, the comics. Remember her escaping the hospital?
Ah, yes. Okay. That is a strong potential link. Wow.
Totally. And then there's Lo's special skill.
The bow. Or something else.
Something else. He can apparently travel between locations using mirrors.
Mirrors? Okay.
Yeah.
Wait, like Mono used TVs in LN2.
Exactly. The comparison was instant. Mono, who became the Thin Man, it raises all sorts of questions.
So, yeah, the sources strongly suggest these aren't just random kids, their designs, their abilities. They seem deliberately connected to the existing universe.
It feels intentional, yeah. Hints at maybe why these two are together, why they're in the spiral. Big stuff for the lore hounds.
Definitely something to watch.
Yeah.
All right, let's switch gears to gameplay. The core feel is familiar, sources say.
Yes, the basics seem the same. That 2.5D view, the platforming, climbing, sneaking, solving environmental puzzles, that core is still there.
But the elephant in the room.
Yeah.
The massive change everyone's focused on. Co-op.
That's a big one.
Yeah.
First time ever in the main series, Little Nightmares 3rd is built for online co-op. You and a friend playing as Lo and Alone together.
Online co-op. What if you want to play alone, though, like the originals?
Totally doable. The sources are clear on that. You can play solo, and an AI partner will control the other character.
Okay, that's good.
And the producer interview mentioned multiple save slots, too. So you could have a solo run, a co-op run, maybe try both characters.
Sensible. How do their tools, the bow and the wrench, actually work in gameplay? More than just weapons, right?
Right. Sources describe them as key for getting around and solving puzzles. Lo might shoot arrows to hit distance switches. Alone might use her wrench on pipes or machinery.
And they have to work together.
Yeah, definitely. Like maybe opening event needs both of them. Or one distracts while the other does something. Teamwork seems essential. And they'll find other items too, like that umbrella shown in demos.
Built around collaboration then. What about the things chasing you? The monsters. Creepy adults are back.
Oh yes. We know about one big new one. Monster Baby.
Monster. Baby. Okay.
Described as huge, clumsy, disturbingly curious, possibly linked to the Necropolis backstory.
Yikes.
And demo previews mention other classic creepy adults, like an old lady in a candy factory setting. Sounds very Nightmares.
Classic, yeah.
Yeah.
But is there something worse? Something bigger?
The official info explicitly says they have to escape an even greater threat lurking in the shadows. So yeah, expect a major antagonist beyond the area bosses.
Always something bigger and scarier.
Yeah.
Keeps that vulnerability high.
Yeah.
How do the devs describe the horror style this time? Any specific terms in the sources?
They use the phrase chiming horror.
Chiming horror.
Yeah. It's less about jump scares, more psychological. Unease, the horror of the absurd, but always seen through a child's eyes.
Small against a big, scary world.
Exactly. Overwhelming, terrifying, but they also stress there's always that spark of light or hope from the kids. The Necropolis is an example. They used warm colors, ruins, but a really dark story underneath, that contrast.
Okay, that makes sense. So that covers the game itself. But shifting to co-op, new developer, bound to cause discussion, right? What are the community sources saying? What are people talking about?
The co-op is far and away the main topic, especially on places like Reddit. People have asked for multiplayer for ages, yeah.
Sure.
But the fact that it's online only, that's a real sticking point for some. Big disappointment voiced in the community sources.
Meaning no split screen, no sitting on the couch together.
That's what it looks like, based on what's been said so far. And yeah, you see comments about the death of split screen or calling it anti-consumer. Makes it harder for families or friends in the same room.
Yeah, I could see that being frustrating for local play. But didn't the producer interview mention something? Like a workaround? A pass?
Yes, good point. That's important. The producer talked about integrating a Friends Pass feature.
Friends Pass? How does that work?
The idea, as they explained it, is one person buys the game, and they can invite a friend online to play with them, even if the friend doesn't own the game.
Ooh. So only one copy needed for 2 people online.
That seems to be the gist, yeah. The interview also confirmed cross-gen play, too. PS5 with PS4, Xbox Series with Xbox One.
Okay, so the Friends Pass helps with the cost of online play. But it still doesn't solve the local co-op issue, does it?
Exactly. It raises that question. How much does this Friend Pass really address the core complaint from people who wanted to share a screen? It helps online accessibility, but it's not couch co-op.
Right, different things. And speaking of sharing the experience, what about the feel of the game? Does co-op change the atmosphere? What did sources say about that?
There's a hands-on demo preview that tackled this head-on. The writer felt the co-op demo did capture the series' spirit, the look, the feel.
Right.
But their personal take was that playing it co-op felt less tense or scary than solo entries. Still atmospheric, still unsettling, but maybe not as isolatingly scary.
And that's the million-dollar question, isn't it? It brings up this fundamental balance issue.
Huh.
Can you really keep that core feeling, that deep, isolated dread, being small and alone when you're playing online with someone?
It's a huge challenge. How do you make a shared experience feel as terrifyingly personal as being totally alone in the dark? That's what Supermassive has to figure out.
Yeah, fascinating problem. Any other big community talking points in the sources?
Music comes up. Tobias Lodge's music was so iconic for the first 2 games.
Right, essential.
Sources say he is contributing some tracks to LN3, but he's not the main composer this time. Someone named Thomas Rosés is likely the new lead.
Okay. How are fans feeling about that?
Mostly hopeful from the discussions. Hopeful the new music keeps that distinct LN style, but maybe adds its own spin. You know, like LN1 was more classical, LN2 more electronic. People are curious about the evolution.
Makes sense. And the release date?
Yeah.
Just 2025. I assume that drives speculation.
Oh, constantly. Especially after it was delayed into 2025, people are guessing summer, fall, hoping for Halloween, or worrying it might slip further into 2026. Lots of anticipation there.
Understandable. And the last big fan question, I guess, will Six or Mono show up? Are the old characters coming back?
Yeah, the Reddit threads are full of that. It's really split. Some fans desperately want more closure or connection for Six and Mono.
All others.
Others feel like it's time to really focus on Low and Alone, let their story be its own thing. The developers haven't completely ruled anything out, but all the official focus in the sources is definitely on the new pair. Maybe some subtle nods, but the spotlight's on them.
Okay, so let's try and boil this all down. Summing up this whole deep dive into the sources, what are the absolute key takeaways for Little Nightmares the Fae?
Well, the big picture is definitely a game stepping into new territory. You've got the new developer, Supermassive, 2 brand new protagonists, Low and Alone.
Exploring a new main area, the Spiral, inside the familiar nightmare world of the Nowhere.
Exactly. The core gameplay, that puzzle platforming survival horror, seems intact. But the fundamental shift is the online co-op.
Which is something parts of the community asked for, but as the sources show, it brings up real questions. Questions about keeping that unique, scary atmosphere and about accessibility without local multiplayer.
Right, and the universe is expanding too, with things like that canonical podcast tying in, and maybe some deep lore links for the new characters, all while trying to keep that specific, chiming horror feel.
It really does feel like a bold move. Lots of potential, but some really interesting challenges baked in.
For sure. And it kind of leaves us, and you listening, with this one big thought to mull over.
Yeah, what's that?
Well, with this big shift to online co-op, this deep dive really highlights a fascinating tension, doesn't it? Can facing these childhood fears together, online, with a friend, actually deliver that same deep, profound sense of being utterly alone, vulnerable, and terrified that made the first 2 games so impactful?
Can you really be just as scared when you know someone's right there with you in the dark, even virtually?
That's the question. We'll have to wait until 2025, step back into that nightmare, and find out.